Alright, in this video I want to take a look at the European parliamentary election results in 4 countries, those being France, Italy, Spain, and Greece. And this is going to be kind of a general overview of the results and what we got out of those countries, what the numbers were for each of the parties. And this is going to be an overview and just a quick look at what happened in those countries last Sunday. Now, in France, we arguably had one of the most important results across the entirety of Europe, and that was Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party, the right-wing populist party in France, dominated this election, winning first place with 31.4% of the vote. This is the third time in a row that the National Rally, formerly known as the National Front, has won these elections in France. They won in 2014, they held on in 2019 ahead of Macron's party, and this time they surged around 8 points, going from 23% to 32%. And Emmanuel Macron's party, formerly known as Les Républicains En Marche, now known as the Renaissance Ensemble, is completely collapsed in this election, only winning 14.6%. This is the party of the French president, and they did hold on to second place, but they dropped. They dropped from 23%. They were neck and neck with the National Rally in the last election, so we see the National Rally surge around 8 points, and the Renaissance Party, the of Macron, basically crashed the same amount. And so there is a huge gap of around 15 points in first and second place. The National Rally has twice as many votes as Macron's Liberal bloc. And so this was a huge defeat for Macron, and because of this, he actually dissolved the French Parliament, the French National Assembly, and is holding new elections, is called for new elections, and this is going to be kind of used as a test for him. It's going to be, it is a calculation. He hopes maybe to win those elections or perform better in those elections because of the systematic differences in the electoral system and maybe some of the media presence on what happened off of this election. So it's definitely a risk, and I will definitely do some videos covering those results, but this result was such a shock for Macron. Not really a shock. I mean, the polls had predicted this, but this was a kind of, finalization of what people had expected, and this was a political defeat for President Macron. And so he's holding the snap national elections to kind of recalculate his power and kind of as a signal. And which way, depending on which way those goes, will determine the future of basically French politics. So that will be a very important election, and we will cover that. It's only in a few weeks now, and so I'll do some more videos on that. But we also had the Socialist Party. This is the party of former President Hollande, and they did actually pretty well in this election, winning around 14%. They came close third, and this might not be a good result for them historically speaking. They are one of France's two main parties, but in the last two presidential elections, they went to around 1% and then 6% in 2017. And so this result was not necessarily a total, catastrophe for them. They actually gained some support and were the main left-wing party. Now, LFI, the La France Insoumise, is the Unbowed France or Unsubmissive France. This is a left-wing populist party. This is the party led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, which is a very, very strong left-wing populist figure. And even sometimes the party is somewhat considered to the left of the traditional French Communist Party. They got around 10% of the vote. It seems that Mélenchon himself polls very high as a presidential figure when his name is on the ballot, but the party itself has a kind of a support base of around 8 to 12%. This is an okay result for them, but of course they were beat by the Socialists, and that's going to have some implications on which of the left-wing parties is the strongest when they form this kind of collective alliance, because for the national elections, the Socialist Party, the LFI, and the Greens, and as well as the Communist Party and some other left-wing parties are working together for the upcoming national elections. So that will kind of have an importance on how many candidates each party gets for this new alliance. Now, the Les Républicains is the kind of center-right traditional French conservative party. They won 7.2%. This is, not a great result for them at all. And same with the Socialists. They are one of the two main parties that has dominated French politics in the past. This is the party of Nicolas Sarkozy, and of course, technically speaking, the party of Charles de Gaulle, the successor to the old center-right conservative parties in France. And so this result for them is kind of expected. This is in line with what they've got in recent elections, but historically speaking, it shows that, of course, they are only at 7%, the Socialists only at 13%. The National Rally, which used to be kind of a sideline as a kind of a party that was no one really was going to work with, and it was kind of on the fringe with only maybe 10%, has clearly proven themselves a strong political force in France. And the traditional parties have collapsed. I mean, even support going to the more far left, the far right, the center, away from the traditional, labeled center-left and center-right parties. The Greens actually collapsed in this election. The last EU election in 2019, the Green Party in France did pretty well. They came third place with around 12-13%, and so they fell barely enough to get some seats, but they did hold on to that. So this was a defeat for them. And then Reconquête, this is the party of Eric Zemmour. This is arguably to the right of the National Rally, more focused on economic, classical economic issues. This has a right-wing profile in terms of immigration, in terms of its Euroscepticism, but it has a very different economic program than the National Rally. But this is the party led by Eric Zemmour, and their lead candidate was Marion Maréchal Le Pen, the niece of Marine Le Pen, and they were able to win 5.5%, winning some seats. There has been some infighting in the party recently due to the chaos by the snap elections, but this party did end up winning some seats. Now, if we look at the seats, we see that the National Rally was clearly ahead with 30 seats, up 7 from the 23 they had before. So they had more than double. They won more than double the seats of Emmanuel Macron's party, which was at 13, and also the Socialist Party, which was also at 13 seats. The LFI gained some, winning 9 seats. The Republicans had 6 with some losses. The Greens, of course, here lost 8 seats down to 5, and Reconquête, the party of Eric Zemmour, with Marion Maréchal Le Pen as its main candidate, won 5 seats as well. Now, Jordan Bardella was the lead candidate for the National Rally in this election. He was the main candidate as well in 2019, but he is probably going to be the prime ministerial candidate for the legislative election. So it's possible that a lot of these candidates that were elected to the EU elections are going to be actually running for the national parliament now in a few weeks' time, and some of them could be traded out for whoever is going to supplement them once the seats change after those elections. And so that's going to be it for France, and we're going to look at the next country. Now, in Italy, we actually had somewhat of a low turnout election. There wasn't a complete collapse, but there was a small dip in the overall turnout in the country, and this partially has to do with the fact that Meloni has not taken as much of a hardline position, has not shifted away from the status quo as much as people kind of initially expected, and for this reason, there is somewhat of a lack in enthusiasm amongst her own base, and of course, on the other hand, there's people on the left that traditionally would go out and vote to prevent someone like Meloni or Salvini from winning that are kind of, not as enthused to do that, with her not being as much of a threat, at least in their eyes. And of course, that doesn't mean that, that's the majority, that's the case for most people or even that many, but there is a small dip in turnout and enthusiasm around this election within Italy, and kind of a focus on Italy within Europe hasn't been the case as much as it has in previous elections. But if we take a look at the result, we see that Meloni's party, the Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy, clearly won this election. They went from 6% to around 29% of the vote, clearly ahead, 4 points ahead of the Democratic Party, the PD, the traditional center-left party. And most of these votes came from the shift from Lega. Now, in the last election, Lega, the party of Matteo Salvini, won around 34%. It was a huge victory for them. And so Lega and Fratelli d'Italia are both in government. They are similar. They're both right-wing populist, kind of Italian nationalist conservative parties. But there are some differences. Lega is more friendly towards Russia. The Fratelli d'Italia is more Atlanticist. Fratelli d'Italia was also more critical of the COVID lockdown measurements, whereas Lega was more supportive of them. So there were differences that kind of made the voters shift in one direction towards the other, and so there was a collapse of Lega support, which fell from 34% down to 9%. And a lot of that went over to Fratelli d'Italia, which surged up to being the largest party. So kind of a shift in position. Obviously, if you look at the overall share of support for the right and the left, there isn't too much of a change. There's rather more of a shift from one party to the other, being the dominant right-wing party within the so-called center-right coalition within Italy. The center-left gained some support, 24%. This was okay result for them. They came second place. They were able to win, a moderate amount of support. The Five Star Movement, which has been strong over the past several elections since they were founded, it's not a very old party, but they fell to 10%. This was kind of a drop in support for them. Obviously, the party is still relevant in Italian politics. Third place, they are, represented in many Italian state legislatures, and they are a very important player in forming coalitions against the right-wing coalition. They have become somewhat of a partner for the PD, but also not completely, tied to them. So they did lose some support, but they are clearly, part of the political scene still, and they will be, at least for some time, with this result. Forza Italia, this is the party of Berlusconi. This is the kind of successor to the traditional Christian Democratic Party in Italy. This is the main center-right party within the country. They won 9.6%. This is in line with what they've gotten in recent elections. Like I said, Lega dropped completely, down to only 9%. And then you have the AVS. This is an alliance of kind of left-wing populists and green parties. They get around 6.8%. A slight increase in support, and they were able to, with that, win some seats. If you take a look at the seats, the Brothers of Italy party won 24, 3 more than the Democratic Party, which won 21. So it's a gain of 18 for Fratelli d'Italia and a loss in 21 for Lega's party of Salvini. They only won 8 seats, and this was, of course, for all three of these parties won around 9-10%, all got 8 seats, and the left-wing alliance won 6. There's also the South Tyrol People's Party, which is kind of a minority party, which won 1 as well. Now, if we look at the results for Spain, we can see this election was completely dominated by the center-right People's Party and the center-left Workers' Party. These are the two main establishment parties in Spain that have dominated Spanish politics for much of its history, and they clearly won in this election. The Conservatives actually won first place, winning 34%. This is a huge increase from what they got in the last election when they were somewhat competing with the Ciudadanos Party. That was a kind of other center-right, centrist party, which has completely collapsed. They failed to qualify for even 1 seat, and some of the votes that they had won in the last election, that 10% that they had got, went to the People's Party, or the Partido Popular, which won first place ahead of the Socialist Party, which is the party of the incumbent Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez. And so this was a victory for the Conservatives. You also have the right-wing Vox Party, which is somewhat of an ally to the People's Party. They're not officially, allied, but it is kind of assumed that if these parties were to win a majority in the future, they might form a government. And so they were able to win 9.6%. This is kind of in line with what Vox has gotten in the last few elections. In the last EU elections, they got only around 6-7%. So this is a minor increase in support for them, but this is kind of down from their high in 2019. So this is in line with what kind of was expected. The AR, this is an alliance of various regional parties. Of course, in Spain, you have the Catalonian region, you have the Basque region, you have some of the kind of island territories, and so there's a lot of regional parties. This is an alliance of kind of left-wing populist parties from those territories, including Basque and Catalonia, and they were able to win some seats. Sumar is a split away group from Podemos. It is a kind of it's kind of another left-wing populist party that is in a way succeeding Podemos because they of course replaced them somewhat with support, and it has kind of positions to the left of the Workers' Party. This party, the SALF, is a party founded by kind of a media personality. It is attributed to being right-wing populist by some, but also can be said to be libertarian. So it is a somewhat right-wing party somewhere on the political spectrum. It's a new party that was able to be founded, I believe, a few months before the election and was able to win some seats here. Podemos, of course, the traditional left-wing populist party, which was very strong in Spain in the 2012, 2013 years. They have collapsed. I mean, they are basically very low. We're able to win some seats, but only around 3.3% of the vote. The Junts UE, this is the conservative, more centrist Catalonian party. They were able to win 2.5%, and then you have the Liberal Party with kind of some pro-EU positions, 1.6. If you take a look at the seats, of course, the People's Party won 22 with the most, followed by the Socialists with 20. So an increase in 9 seats for the People's Party, a huge increase. And this also result in Spain being one of the major countries in Europe in terms of population and seats. This result definitely helped the European People's Party, Europe-wide, because this was a large increase in both votes and seats. Now for Vox, they were able to gain some, not too much, but around 3% and 2 seats. The Republics now gain 3 seats from various regions. Sumar, 3. The new kind of right-wing party, 3 seats. Podemos, 2. And then the 2 other parties, 1 seat as well. Now, the last country we're going to look at is Greece. Now, in Greece, there was somewhat of an underperformance of New Democracy. This is the current incumbent party, or the current party of the incumbent Prime Minister, Mitsotakis. They were polling at around 33%. They fell to 28%. So this was not a huge, great victory for them. They did win first place. They did win first place by far, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that Syriza, the party of the former Prime Minister Tsipras, which is a more kind of left-wing populist party, they completely collapsed. And so the results for New Democracy was a victory. They were able to win the election clearly ahead, but they probably wanted at least a few more points. But nonetheless, an okay result for them. For Syriza, this is a very bad result. The party has lost a lot of support in recent elections. They've fallen from around 30% to 20, 25, falling below 20%, and here in this election they fell below 15%. They are still the main left-wing party. That is significant because hypothetically, if the Syriza and the Social Democrats, which is the PASOK Kinal party here in green, were to win, a majority together, technically Syriza could claim the prime ministership. But with these results, with New Democracy still being very strong, it's probably likely that's going to be a while for that happens, if it does happen. So for the result for Syriza, they did lose heavy support, but they were able to hold on at second place. They can maybe consider that to be a moderate kind of losses that they can tolerate, but it is a very big problem for the party. Now, for the Social Democrats, they were able to win 12.8. They were previously very strong in Greece. However, since the rise of Syriza with Tsipras, they have lost a lot of support, and they are slowly building back some of the base they had, but it's clearly not able, on the same level with New Democracy, which is technically their center-right counterpart. Now, the Greek Solutions Party, EL here, is part of the ECR. This is a party maybe to the right of New Democracy, more Eurosceptic, more national conservative. They were able to gain some support in place around 10%. The Greek Communist Party is a very important party here, was also able to win around 10%. The Greek Communist Party is a very traditional left-wing party. It is a party that has very positions that are very maybe conservative in terms of where it aligns on a lot of the issues. And this is one party that actually might align with the Alliance Saravagenek, the BSV, in the European Parliament to form kind of a somewhat conservative, left-wing, populist, left-wing, socialist group. So it's still up in the air, but this is one party that maybe could form that group because although they are communist, they do not sit with the European left like some of the other communist parties in Europe do. Now, the last three parties are somewhat anti-establishment or populist parties, with the NIKI and the FL being right-wing ones, holding very kind of nationalistic positions, very conservative positions, and Eurosceptic positions, and the PE here being a more left-wing populist party, and they were all able to win seats. Now, if we take a look at the seats, you can see New Democracy actually lost 1, going down to 7. Syriza lost 2 with 4. The Social Democrats right behind them with 3. The Greek Solution and Communist Party each won 2, and the other 3 were all on 1 seat. And so that's going to be it for this video. I wanted to kind of give a brief overview of the results, and I will do, of course, some more videos covering the next countries in the EU elections, the ones that held their elections, of course, also on last Sunday, and then I will do some more videos covering the upcoming French and British elections as we get closer to them. So I hope everyone liked the video. If you do, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you all for watching.